Welcome back to another episode of Let's Talk About Human Rights, the show in which we discuss all things related to human rights. I'm your host, Jules Allender, and I am part of the California chapter of Youth for Human Rights International. Youth for Human Rights International's purpose is to enlighten and educate people around the world on what their human rights are, with specific focus on I'll give that to you again, with specific focus on the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And with this education, to enable and inspire the youth of today as our leaders of tomorrow to stand up and secure these rights for themselves and all people on earth. As you know, for each show, we like to take up one right and try to broaden your understanding of how this right is important to you and your loved ones. And for today's show, we'll be taking a look at human rights, number one, which is entitled, We Are All Born Free and Equal. And it states, all human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. They are endowed with reason and conscience and should act towards one another in a spirit of brotherhood. Now let's take a look at a short video about this specific human right.
Can you tell which of these children was not born free? Can you tell which of these children was not born equal? Can you tell which of these children does not deserve to be treated with dignity? We can't either. Human right number one. We are all born free and equal. What are human rights? Find out at youthforhumanrights.org.
All right, let's examine these ideas a little more closely. And let's take a deep dive into one of the most vibrant aspects of human society, religious diversity. From the clothes we wear, the foods we savor, the melodies we cherish, the holidays we celebrate, to the places we escape to for vacation, diversity is woven into every thread of our lives. But when it comes to diversity, few aspects of human existence are as profound, vibrant, and deeply rooted in history as the world's religions. Each faith carries with it a unique tapestry of traditions, rituals, and beliefs, reflecting the cultural, spiritual, and philosophical perspectives of countless generations. From the intricate ceremonies of Hinduism to the harmonious chants of Buddhism, the solemn prayers of Islam to the rich storytelling of indigenous faiths, religion offers an unparalleled window into the heart of human identity and community. Together, they paint a stunning mosaic of human understanding and connection, showcasing the boundless creativity and depth of the human spirit in its search for meaning and purpose. Perhaps most inspiring is the collective aim to improve society, a goal that underscores the teachings of many faiths. From advocating for peace and equality to encouraging acts of generosity and service, religions often function as moral compasses guiding humanity toward shared progress. When we step back and look at these unifying principles, it becomes clear that what unites us is far greater and more enduring than the differences that may initially appear to divide us. In this shared humanity, there lies a powerful opportunity for mutual understanding, respect, and collaboration. However, with this incredible diversity comes a significant challenge. Misunderstandings can easily arise, and differences, instead of enriching our global tapestry, can become points of contention. When people encounter beliefs or practices that are unfamiliar, fear or skepticism may take hold. leading to assumptions or judgments that only deepen the divide. Over time, these misunderstandings can escalate, creating an us versus them mentality that fosters distrust and conflict. History has shown us countless examples of how these differences, left unaddressed, can turn into battlegrounds, literal and metaphorical, where cultural, ideological, and religious clashes have led to division, oppression, and even violence. In such cases, the richness of diversity becomes overshadowed by the inability to bridge gaps in understanding and communication. These challenges are not limited to large-scale global conflicts. They play out in everyday interactions as well. From workplace to communities, the lack of effort to appreciate and respect differences can result in exclusion, alienation, and a failure to build meaningful connections. It becomes all too easy to focus on what sets us apart rather than what unites us, creating barriers that hinder cooperation and harmony. Yet, within this challenge lies an opportunity. By acknowledging and addressing these potential pitfalls, we can cultivate empathy, foster dialogue, and build bridges that transform diversity from a source of conflict into a wellspring of strength and collaboration. Again, there's a core of common values that unites these traditions, whether it's the urge to help one another, the pursuit of spiritual awareness, or the collective aim to better our societies. Religions share more in common than what might divide them. This brings us to our focus today, interfaith groups. Internationally, there are dedicated individuals and organizations striving to amplify these shared values, encouraging people from various faiths to elaborate on common ground. These interfaith groups are the unsung heroes in fostering peace, understanding, and cooperation in a world that desperately needs it. Let's explore how these groups work, their impact, and why they're essential in our quest for a harmonious global community. And with that, it is my pleasure to introduce our guest today, Kay Daly. Kay has dedicated her life to fostering understanding and unity across different faiths, beginning her journey in the interfaith community in her childhood. Her works has taken her from Sacramento, California to Sydney, Australia, touching lives and building bridges along the way. She has served as the vice president of the Interfaith Council of Greater Sacramento, a position she held for the last 5 years. Additionally, in her commitment to combating prejudice, Kay volunteers her times with the U.S. Attorney's Hate Crime Task Force. And so please join me in welcoming Kay Daly. Hi, Kay.
Hi.
How are you?
Very well. I'm enjoying life immensely. Thank you.
Oh, that's great to hear. I'm happy for you. All right, well, let's talk about interfaith. Can you lay out a really good explanation of what an interfaith group is?
Absolutely. Interfaith group is a group of people that are either approaching each other because they want their own faith more understood, which is often the case, or they find themselves really not understanding what other people are about. In an activity called fellowship, which is where you are basically meeting with people and you find commonalities. If you focus on commonalities and inclusion, that's usually the most winning attitude that you can have, because if you focus on the differences of the various faiths or appearances or anything like that, or what they celebrate or believe, you'll never win. You have to focus on the common problems that we share, that we can all work together on.
Excellent. So fellowship, just to touch on that, I think that's a word that is commonly misunderstood. Um,
Yeah.
is
Expand on that a little bit.
Yeah, if you could.
Yeah. Sure. So fellowship takes place in a lot of different ways. It's a meeting of different people of different faiths. I mean, you can have fellowship with your own faith, but A lot of times, for example, when the Jews were being attacked, there was interfaith activity where people went to their temples and stood with them and prayed, of all different faiths. The same thing with the Muslims in 2001. Sometimes the Sikhs were attacked because people misunderstood them and thought that they were Muslims. Neither one would be an acceptable thing to do, but obviously, but that kind of misunderstanding is what fellowship fosters, a new understanding of each other. When you're around people and you can see their true character as opposed to what the rumors are or whatever it may have been exposed to information wise, that fellowship creates an entirely different reality that you can actually judge for yourself the quality of the person you're dealing with.
Yeah, and I think that very last part to your statement, the quality of the person that you are dealing with,
Yeah.
is what one really wants to know and is what one should be valued for, and not their religious beliefs or their background or things
No,
of.
exactly. I mean, I have friends in so many different faith bases, and we were all very different from what each other conceived each other to be, and I have very many, Muslim friends, and none of them are anything that one would find rumored on some channels. And I have Jewish friends, and it's just you can take the generality, or you can take the person at face value. And I think one of the key words for how I look at fellowship and just how I live is inclusion. It's just, it's much better to have an affinity with someone and try to work with them or team with them in some way that is constructive. Like in the Interfaith Council, we worked together in Habitat for Humanity. We built houses together. And that's an example, in a way, of fellowship. When there were challenges, this is many years ago, when there were some challenges between the Muslim and Jewish faiths, we had mediations, we had meetings, there's so much you can create with just a good group of people from a lot of different faiths.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for expanding on that. And so in terms of purpose of the interfaith, and you may have touched on this already, but what is, the purpose in having interfaith, and what are they trying to achieve?
It is pretty simplistic. It's to create a greater understanding and harmony between one's own religion and other faiths. We're all met with very similar problems in the world. There's drug addiction in many faiths. There's, domestic violence is an issue in some countries more than others. But there's things that have nothing to do with how you believe that we're faced with. And we found that united, we resolve a lot more if we stop looking at or deflecting people because of how they think, but just go, oh, you have a son that's drug addicted too. I do too. Let's talk about what we can do about that. That is basically like one of the highest purposes. Also, you find that you have an environment where you can enlighten other faiths as to your similarities and goals and activities so that you can work creatively. Many of the things that happen in the world, like the Uyghurs in China being, brutally murdered, are all, well, I would say it's beyond misunderstanding at this point on China's part, because the UN is kind of confronting them. But anyway, that's the kind of thing that is achieved by misunderstanding and not knowing what the person believes, and that not just like rejecting them or being prejudicial.
Yeah. And maybe you can just touch on, in case our audience doesn't know, what you're referring to with the Uyghurs in China and how they're being
Oh,
religiously
sure. So the
persecuted.
Uyghurs are a Muslim group, and the Chinese do not consider them want to word this carefully, basically valid citizens. So they jail them and they harvest their organs. It's it's crucial. It's cruel. I mean, it's savage, basically. And so the Uyghurs are constantly trying to find places they can live that are safe. I think most recently they fled to Thailand and some of them were sent back to China.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's quite inhumane. It's cruel. It's a violation of human rights to the nth degree.
Yeah. I mean, it's about as personal a violation as you can get.
Right. Yeah. And you mentioned that the United Nations is now confronting them on that.
They've been doing it for a while. We'll
Oh,
see what happens. I mean, there's several places in the world where the UN is intervening. So, but China has a unique capacity to attract attention for these activities.
understood.
Yeah.
Hmm. I just have and then in regards to maybe one's lack of fellowship, I guess one could say, I think I don't know if, compare, well, let me start with this. The youth of today live in this social media, very screen-oriented age, right? Where they're just in front of screens, and so they're constantly getting messages of some sort. And
Right.
I'm not sure if like, do you feel like that plays a part in maybe religious persecution or misunderstandings or specific um gosh, what's the word I'm looking for? Labels concerning
Yeah.
different religious beliefs.
But honestly, I hadn't thought of it until you mentioned it, but I actually can really see that, for me, it is the personal contact that changes everything. I meet with my Sikh friends, I meet with, my Muslim or Seventh-day Adventist friends, and it's a personal contact, and I can see and hear and touch them, and they're very real to me. When you're looking at a screen, I just am always so suspect of what translation has this gone through? Whose opinion is this really? And what story is trying to be told instead of actually seeing an actual religious person and judging for yourself?
Right. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I would agree with you. And just think the messaging is so intense in this day and age, even compared to 10 years ago or 20 years.
Oh, yes, it's changed and drastically. Although, like in California, we do have less hate crimes. I was at a meeting last week. We have less hate crimes uh, than we had in the 34 counties that we're over. It's over a portion of Northern California. But there's an increase of religious hate crimes, very slight, but an increase.
Interesting. Yeah, because even in the United States, right? I think one of them that always sticks out to me, maybe because I lived in Utah for 2 years, was, you have a Broadway play, The Book of Mormon, right? Which
Oh, yeah.
I've never seen, but I've heard, and it's just it's disgusting that we're
Yeah.
taking individuals' religious beliefs and we're mocking them.
It's so easy to ridicule something you don't understand, and it's a surefire hint that you don't understand it because, it's just, anyway, yeah, I never saw it either. I have many Mormon friends, and I was like, I'm not even giving this the price of a ticket. It's just disgusting.
Yeah, exactly.
But
Excellent. And so, with that, in your experience, you've obviously touched many religions and many people of many different faiths. How
Mhm.
different is one religion to the next, really?
Well, it's a great question. I mean, some of them are quite different. You have the attitude in some religions. I'm not going to name them out because I don't want a chance offending them, but some religions consider that man is simply a sinner and has hardly any goodness in him and he must repent. And then you have other religions that consider that man is basically good and he just needs to handle his transgressions and address those. Do you know? So those are pretty diametrically opposed in a lot of ways. And then you do have in various sacred writings in some faiths, you have homophobic language in some religions. And then you have different things in other faiths that acknowledge that right. So there's just it is the ideology that the person is living by, and it is usually God driven. And so, but there's so many interpretations of the Bible. There's so many interpretations in the Muslim faith. There's, I mean, there's quite some choices.
Yeah, I would say there's not lack of choices to be religious,
No,
fine, which is great. I mean, it's, one has,
diversity is great. I think we would be truly bored if it was really homogeneous on this planet. I really do. I think it would be very vanilla. It's great to have a multi-textual group of people with lots of different viewpoints. And the best thing is that there's actually discussion. We're talking about what is interfaith actually. Interfaith is that opportunity to have a discussion and not an argument, just to absolutely, can we just have like a discussion about, well, this is what I believe, or, oh, you do that, we don't do that, this is something we do, and you can have those dialogues.
yeah. I've had many occasions, one being on my own interest. When I moved to Utah, I went to school out there for 2 years, and my best friend, she grew up Mormon, her family is Mormon, and I had the utmost respect for the family and never found it weird or different. So I'm like, well, take me to church. Like, I want to
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
and went several times and then would get into open discussions about, well, what are your religious beliefs? Well, I heard this. Well, okay, good. Well, no, that's not actually true. This is the truth. And then you can see that prejudice, whether they wanted to be prejudiced or not. I think sometimes like it'll just automatically pop in for the person because of past things that they've heard just
Mm-hmm.
dissipated,
Right.
right?
It is so incredible. I mean, my interfaith journey started when I was about 8, and it's people go, "What?" And I'm like, I was asking my mom, my friend is Tibetan Buddhist, and I want to go, or she's Buddhist, and I want to go to temple with her. Okay, Kay, you can go. And I was like, oh, I was very interested. And then, oh, my friend wants me to come with her to Lutheran Bible camp this summer. And my mom's going, you want to go to Bible camp? And I'm like, yeah, I think it sounds like a great idea. It sounds really interesting. And so from a very young age, I was really interested. But the thing is it tells you so much about how people think. They're designing their entire life on how to survive better, how to live in a more godly way, how to have standards in their life, what is right and wrong. It's so personal. That's why it's such a volatile subject. It's very close to the human spirit when you talk about how does one judge what is right and wrong, what is good and evil, all those kinds of things.
Yeah, I would agree. It's very close, to heart. It's very close to the fabric of the individual. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, excellent points. And so let's just say, for instance, you're at the grocery store, and obviously, again, having the knowledge that you have and touching all of these different religions. And is it easy for you to spot like who is a Catholic or who's a Christian or a Jew or a Muslim?
Oh no. I mean, so many times people are not wearing outfits that are characteristic of their belief. I mean, you could see a hijab, or you could see or you could see a cap, or you could see the length of the dress, or you could see, like with the Amish little caps or something that's particularly stand out. But a lot of times people of faith that and frankly, the sort of person that I've become because of this work is more like, I don't really look for the differences anymore. I just will have a conversation with anybody. If I'm in the grocery line, it doesn't even dawn on me what color they are or what religion they are. I'm just, oh, this person's friendly. So to be honest, I'm probably the worst person to ask about that, because I don't even I I don't pay attention. But the time that I do pay attention is if I know that I'm having a meeting with someone. I do freshen up my understanding of their faith, what their projects are in their faith, how they dress, what their values are, so that I'm relevant in my discussion with them,
Right. And I think to your point, you're probably the worst person. I actually think it's opposite because one who you have all this understanding and knowledge about others' religion, and that you're not actively seeking to find differences to maybe stay away or be aware or right. You
Yeah,
have this understanding of like, okay, great, we all have these similarities,
that's right.
so I'm not really concerned about another's religious beliefs. I'm concerned how they're doing today or are they
Right.
friendly? Yeah.
And occasionally, because of that friendship, um, they will discuss. Now, here's the thing. I'm from Uganda and I'm Presbyterian, and here's what I think. And now that's going to be different from you, Kay Alice. And I go, okay, that's great. Thank you for that illustration.
Right.
But, and my Sikh friends are the same way, I'll say, well, I didn't even realize that you had an entire code of rules that you always attempt to live by. That's so impressive, the standards. And my friend said, you may become a Sikh yet, Kay Alice. I
That's
said, I'm highly complimented. Thank you very much.
oh, that's great. Yeah. I mean, it's very true. And so can you give us maybe some examples of some events that happened, whether it locally or that you were involved in, where maybe there was some disgruntledness, some disagreement, some
Yeah,
battles between religions and how, a fellowship or what actions you take dissolve that?
sure. Well, a couple that come to mind is the Sikhs in 2001 were a couple of Sikh gentlemen were murdered and they were sitting in their taxi cabs and somebody thought that they were Muslim because they had turbans on. And this was right after, the airplanes struck the buildings in New York City. So greatly distressing. These were like older gentlemen in the Sikh community in Western Sacramento. So basically, I called my friend right away. He hadn't even heard about it yet, and he's one of the heads of that community. And so I said to him, let us know if you want us to cook with you, because that's something they do a lot of, or if we can come to if we want to march or whatever. So then he called me and he said, will you march with us? And I said, of course. And so a group of us marched on the Capitol for religious freedom to back them up. They were so disturbed that people were just doing their job, not the least bit violent and, brutally murdered. So, but what evolved out of that is they never forgot that we came to their aid and we prayed with them in honor of their people at their Gurdwara, their temple where they have services. And then there was a point when my church had some attack and they said, we will come to your aid. We will march with you. We will stand by you. And they were just relentless at helping. Can we cook for you? I mean, what can you do? So that's one example. But another one, I was recently in September at a religious freedom summit in Sydney, Australia. And what occurred was I was one of the speakers, basically about what happens with the U.S. Attorney Hate Crime Task Force and how people prosecute people who have committed crimes just based on somebody's faith or ideas or color. Anyway, we were talking about that, and as a result of that, the Sikh community there came up to me and said, "Would you please come out and visit with us? And we want to show you our Gurdwara." These people, it's amazing. I was talking to a Sikh friend this morning, and I said, I can't believe that your friends in Sydney feed 21,000 people per week. It's a community service. The Sikhs, part of their religion is community service. They find housing for homeless people. They buy houses and let homeless people live. I mean, it's just kind of an amazing thing. And they're so misunderstood. Where if you have some Sikhs living near you, you're very lucky. And so he was saying to me this morning, he said, yeah, we feed even more people than that. He says, people have no idea, what our church is, what my church and your church do to service people. It's incredible. So So anyway, I did go out on tour, the one in Sydney, and it was fantastic. And they were, I'm going to speak there again this year. And but then, as from when we were at the Religious Freedom Summit, a young woman came up and she said, "Can you help the women from Afghanistan?" And I said, "Well, I have no idea. Let me see what I can do." And I started researching it, and that's still a work in progress. And I've stayed in contact with her. Of course, Afghanistan is a very violent place. So, but sometimes it's a matter of just being somebody who you can talk to, or sometimes it's a matter of, let's get some volunteers out there. I mean, also, as I said, in like the interfaith activity here in Sacramento, we've had services in Muslim mosques, we've had services in Jewish synagogue when there's been anti-Semitism, and this created love and unity, you know.
Wow, quite something.
Yeah.
Incredible stories. And that, yeah, I mean, 21,000 people, sheesh. I mean,
I know. It's an
they need to
amazing
hire
thing.
a PR, and just
Well, yeah, and the thing is it's really part of the Sikh faith. When you get to know the Sikhs, they're just kind of an extraordinary quantity. They have this ethical standard that, you are basically, you are here to serve, and that's what they want to do. That's how they live. So it's
incredible.
incredible.
Yeah, it is. So let me ask you this, like big picture, what is the value of society truly coming together and truly understanding one another's man's friends' religious beliefs?
Well, let's put it this way. If there was understanding, there wouldn't be wars. And if there's enough people who have understanding, I mean, right now, this planet in some ways is a hot mess, in my opinion.
I
That's
would
just
agree.
a polite way of saying it. Yeah, it's a kind of exciting place to be. And my husband said to me the other day, "Sometimes I feel like you're just trying to put your arms around the planet and give it a big hug." And I said, "You've come to really understand your wife." you know, but it's like, I try to disseminate the idea that, earth people are friendly. They have a lot of different beliefs. All of us at the tribe of man, we have different ways from the way we were raised or whatever. And it doesn't make us evil. Doesn't make us evil. It's important to understand each other. It's just a basic right that people have to live and be who they are. And just because you're a different way doesn't mean there's any condescension needed. Thank you so much. you know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think the majority of people would agree that, we could do without war and, you know, all the destruction and the death that it brings and
Yeah.
yeah, it's quite something.
Yeah.
Excellent. And so if one wants to get involved with interfaith or wants has a conflict or wants some help with their religion and things of that nature in this manner, how does one go about doing that?
Well, if you're starting from scratch, you can find out where there's a local interfaith council. Some cities have them, some don't. Or you can just arrange a meeting with a local temple or church, or just attend one and get to know them. But get with your own, if you are a person of faith, get with your own religion and find out if there's a particular faith base that they're interested in helping or having fellowship with. It's pretty simple. It's surprisingly simple to walk in and get to know people. I've been to so many different sermons and religious ceremonies. And what's really great is that when you really get down to it, yes, without question, there are some faiths that are very assertive about their faith is the right faith. And I tend to steer clear of that just a little bit, only because I'm interested in inclusion. And if they're not going to do that, I want everybody to be happy, and I don't want anybody to be, you know, negatively treated. So, but yeah, that's what you do. The way I found out about my interfaith connections was I was watching TV, And this guy got up and spoke, and he was the executive director of the Interfaith Council of Sacramento. And I was like, that's where I need to go. I need to help that, you know? So
Yeah.
it's
I guess.
kind of that simple. It's kind of that simple. There's always going to be something, you know?
Yeah. It's just the doing this part of the individual.
Yeah. Just going in and having the bravery to just walk in and have a conversation, you know?
Yeah, and with that, that's I think a great point. Now, from your experience, I'm going to assume that your one's going to receive a lot less backlash than they would expect if they walked into a church and said, "Hey, I'm this religion. I would just want to
Yeah.
get
Oh no,
out."
I haven't had a bad experience in that regard. I just haven't had one.
Yeah.
Especially if you go in and you're not trying to impress your religious beliefs on somebody else. If you come into somebody's synagogue or church and you have some assertion that your faith is better than theirs, skip it. Just skip, because really you have to approach other faiths with asking them questions and getting them to give you a catechism, an education on their faith. I sat with an Episcopal, a Nigerian Episcopal minister for 3 hours in a Starbucks one time when he explained to me what's happening in the Nigerian church, the Episcopalian church. I mean, which was fascinating. I did not know. So, yeah, but the biggest thing is to greet people. You make sure you wake up interested. Make sure you're going someplace. If you're going to do interfaith work, you better be interested in people because they will gladly tell you of their faith if you're respectful and truly asking questions that show you're paying attention.
Right. Yeah. Excellent points. And so, what is next for you in the interfaith world?
Actually, I'm currently working on a project with Uganda with a friend of mine who was the president of the Interfaith Council for Greater Sacramento for a while. And he is a Presbyterian from Uganda who lives here now. And he has some orphanages that he works with, and he wants to increase the young people's employability and also their values and sense of moral code and that kind of thing. So I'm working with him to get some programs in there. He has about 7 different locations, and that project has just started. It's very exciting, and he's truly a great friend. I just really enjoy him.
Well, that's excellent.
Yeah.
It's interesting. There's been a few people that I've interviewed that are working in other countries. One
Mm-hmm.
was the Philippines. I forget the other country, and it was asked to the people that they were helping, well, what do you need?
Right.
We want skills to be able to get a job. Like we need
Right.
jobs, which is to me is a little fascinating because I think more times than not we hear, well, we just want handouts, right?
Oh,
But
interesting.
yeah,
Yeah.
they want to
Yeah.
work. And you're
Right.
like, great, well, and so these organizations were helping them learn skills, sewing and
Right.
different things that so they could sustain life and they could pay for what they need, but they could be competent and they could work. So to
That's
that,
right. And yeah, that's right. And these people want to learn how to study too. We're going to help them with that. But this gentleman comes from a very educated family of Ugandan people. His dad was an MD and his brother was an educator. And I mean, it's just incredible. But it's like in a lot of places that don't have like really a really good education system or something. It's like, okay, so how do you keep young people here? And how do you, I mean, you could look at Ireland. Ireland has had a lot of people, leaving just to get other jobs in other locations, from what I understand anyway. So it's a very basic need.
yeah, it
It's exciting.
makes a whole lot of sense.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, excellent. So we asked this final question to our guests as we're getting to the end of the interview, and that
Hmm.
is, what is your favorite human rights and why?
I mean, I love them all, obviously, but we're born free and equal. I think it's the most, it has to do with my viewpoint of inclusion. I just feel like in this world, and this is just my personal observation, there is enough condescension, there's enough my way is better than yours, or whatever you want to say. And the fact is, I've heard brilliance from any walk of life. I have heard people, and so I really feel it's really important to respect every single human being, that they were born and they're free and equal. And you give them the opportunity to express themselves and be who they are.
Awesome. I love it. It's number one for a reason.
Yes, exactly. It's about as basic as you get. And friend of mine said something one time, and I just think it captures it, that we're all divine sparks from God. And we just all have our own ways of expressing things. And another person who I worked with in the interfaith said, we all come to see God through different doors. But it's like that really is the epitome of interfaith, and also the fact that we are all created equal.
Excellent. I love it. Well, thank you very much for your time and your insight and for all that you shared with us. And most importantly, thank you for all that you do.
Oh, my pleasure. But thank you very much.
You're welcome. All right, well, that's our show for this week. As always, I hope you enjoyed today's episode and you took note and got a lot of value of interfaith, of others people's religious beliefs, the importance to not just hear about it, but know about it, understand it, give it the due respect, and continue to help others. You can follow us on our social media channels. Our YouTube channel is Let's Talk About Human Rights. Our Facebook page is Youth for Human Rights California, and our Instagram and Twitter handles are at YHRCAL. Lastly, don't forget about our website, youthforhumanrights.org, where you can find all of our PSAs in 17 different languages. Until next time, thank you.